Let me try to explain to you why it is that when I encounter the Gurdjieff tradition, whether it's people and talk to people in this Gurdjieff tradition, or whether I encounter the literature, the writings, the talks that are about Gurdjieff or supposedly about Gurdjieff and his teaching, when I encounter this, none of this has anything at all to do with what Gurdjieff was actually teaching. Now, it sounds like a big statement. It is a big statement. It's an arrogant statement, but it's based upon a lot of research and a lot of study. And let me explain to you why. None of these people, none of this writing, all of this nonsense that is the Gurdjieff tradition has nothing to do with what Gurdjieff himself was actually teaching. Gurdjieff's teaching is that we have two consciousnesses having nothing in common. Two consciousnesses having nothing in common is two conscious minds. We are living in the wrong one. We're living in a false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind, indeed at a lower level. This is it from the first pages of Gurdjieff's own writings, and it continues through. Every major chapter repeats the same things over and over again. The chapter on hypnotism. Man has two consciousnesses having absolutely nothing in common. And yet, in the Gurdjieff tradition, there's not a single mention of this. There's nothing in Search of the Miraculous to say man has two consciousnesses, two minds. There's nothing in the system, Ouspensky's teaching in London from 1921 to 1941. Nothing. But this is the central theme of Gurdjieff's teaching. Now, we have two conscious minds. We are living in the wrong one, but our true conscious mind remains in us, Gurdjieff writes, in an isolated state. And I say to you, the reason for this, Gurdjieff was pointing out, is it lacks the energies as fuel for its manifestation, for its activity, and for its development. That's Gurdjieff's teaching. Now, we have two conscious minds. We are living in the wrong one. So first of all, when you hear that we have two conscious minds, you start to think, because you're educated like what I am, you start to think of people like Freud, a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. Fine, I know what that's about. I know what you're talking about, Mike. I understand. Or you think of Jung, a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. Oh, I know what you're talking about, Mike. We have two conscious minds. But what I'd like to point out first, and this is not the most important fact, that will come later. Wait for it. What I want to point out first is that Gurdjieff is saying the exact opposite to these people, to this tradition, to our established ideas about two conscious minds, a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, or a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. Gurdjieff is saying the exact opposite, because these teachings, Freud, Jung and all the others, assume that our conscious mind is us. That's the basic assumption of all the psychological teachings, all the psychiatric teachings. Everything is saying our conscious mind is us. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? Our conscious mind is us. Gurdjieff is saying the exact opposite to that. He's saying this conscious mind that we're in is not us. And here's all the facts that he gave to Ouspensky, for example, that form this Gurdjieff tradition. Here's all the facts. Here's all the reasons why we know it's a false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind at a lower level. Gurdjieff is saying the exact opposite. Now this is mind-boggling to get to grips with first of all. And then comes the big one, the consequence of this. Because what Gurdjieff is actually saying is that we are living in a false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind at a lower level. But our true conscious mind remains in us. Now, the Gurdjieff tradition, all these people and all this writing in the Gurdjieff tradition, all their cleverness, is saying, again, an assumption that our false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind can evolve or develop to become our true conscious mind. That it is us as we are in this false conscious mind that are going to develop to become truly conscious. And Gurdjieff is saying, this is not what happens. It's not true. Our ordinary conscious mind, the conscious mind that we're in now, false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind, is never going to develop. It's never going to evolve. It's never going to wake up. Because our true conscious mind remains in us. It's already in us, in an undeveloped state and in an isolated state, because it lacks the energies for its manifestation, for its activity, and certainly for any development of our true conscious mind. Our true conscious mind is already in us. We're not going to evolve into a true conscious mind. It's already there. Gurdjieff showed this to Ouspensky, showing that at times we do have the state of consciousness appropriate to that true conscious mind, coming from that true conscious mind, consciousness of self, as Ouspensky called it, self-remembering, erroneously, but never mind. These are minor details. So this is what is very difficult for people to understand, that Gurdjieff was actually teaching something very profound, or two things very profound. The first, his idea of two conscious minds, which is not in the Gurdjieff tradition anywhere. No one in the Gurdjieff tradition has mentioned the fact that the central feature of Gurdjieff's teaching is that we have two conscious minds. But Gurdjieff is saying we have two conscious minds, but in an exactly the opposite sense that ordinarily we understand this statement. Conscious mind, unconscious mind, conscious mind, subconscious mind. We assume that our conscious mind is us, the true consciousness. And our subconscious is something else, a little lieutenant looking after us, doing all the paperwork. Or our unconscious is looking after us, making life difficult for us, because it has different desires and different aims, Freudian stuff. That's a technical term, stuff. That's what Freud said. All this stuff. But do you see, Gurdjieff is saying the exact opposite to these people, to the tradition ordinarily established, not to the Gurdjieff tradition, but the tradition established of two conscious minds. Gurdjieff saying the exact opposite. And then we go on to the consequences of that, that our conscious mind that we are in now, the conscious mind, is not going to evolve to become a true conscious mind. Our true conscious mind is already in us. So Gurdjieff's actual teaching is not about work upon oneself, self-development, the evolution of the self, any sort of ideas like this that are being peddled as Gurdjieff's teaching. It's not about waking up. You can't wake up. It's not going to change. It's a false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind. The mind that wakes up is not the mind that is asleep. Gurdjieff's teaching is showing Ouspensky, he was showing Ouspensky and showing others that we are living in a false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind, and that it's never ever going to develop. That's just it. That's how it is. But we have our true conscious mind already inside us. And it doesn't manifest, it doesn't act in us because it lacks the energy. So Gurdjieff's teaching is entirely about starting to find ways of providing the energies as fuel for our true conscious mind. It's not a development in any respect. It's not an evolution in any respect. We're not waking up in any respect. We are providing the energies by various techniques, primarily concerned with our physical existence. Nothing psychological in this. Psychology is a consequence of our energetic states. So we deal with the energetic states. How are we going to produce the energies that we require as fuel for our true conscious mind? That's what Gurdjieff's teaching is. It's not about any sort of self-development of any kind. And this is absolutely mind-boggling. I say another technical term there. But this is mind-boggling for those in the Gurdjieff tradition who think they're working on themselves. What are you talking about? You're living in a false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind at a lower level. Anything you can develop in a false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind at a lower level is going to be a false, fictitious and unreal development. It's a false mind. It's not going to develop at all. If you learn something, fine, you've learned something, but you've learned it in a false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind. So you know it in a false, fictitious and unreal conscious mind. It's not developing you in any way, you've just learned something new. Gurdjieff's teaching is an energetic teaching, starting to look at the fact that our true conscious mind remains in us in an isolated state and in an undeveloped state. Why? Because it lacks the energies, the higher hydrogens of Ouspensky's marvellous exposition in Search of the Miraculous. The higher hydrogens, it lacks those energies. So Gurdjieff's teaching is about starting to provide those energies. Why does it lack those energies? Gurdjieff says it's because we have an excellently working automatism for perceiving all kinds of new impressions. We don't perceive as we should. All our psychological energies, the energies we have, which then manifest as our psychological situation, those energies come from perception, and we don't perceive. And that's Gurdjieff's teaching. So don't confuse Gurdjieff's teaching with any sort of evolution of the individual, any sort of self-development, any sort of improvement, any sort of waking up. Don't confuse Gurdjieff's teaching with those things. That's the Gurdjieff tradition. Does not come from Gurdjieff, at least it is deflected in its root from Gurdjieff by Ouspensky. Ouspensky created marvellous teaching, the Gurdjieff tradition, attributed to Gurdjieff, but it's not Gurdjieff's teaching at all. It has very little, in fact, to do with Gurdjieff's teaching. So Gurdjieff's teaching is not about, in any respect, self-development. It's not about the evolution of the individual. It's not about work upon oneself. It's not about development of any kind. It's about starting to look at how to produce, in a practical way, those energies that we require as fuel for our true conscious mind. That's all we can do. And that's what Gurdjieff was teaching.